class. It's finally Friday.
Yay!
What's everybody going to do for the weekend?
Sleep
June,
in.
what do you, sleep in?
Sleep.
Anything big?
No,
Big plans?
No big plans.
Hopefully all the snow will go away.
Hang with my friends.
Yes.
Hang with your friends.
Lots of movies.
Good.
Hang with my friends.
Well, today, before we get started, I want to ask you a question about, it has to do with what our lesson's going to be about today. Just a question, since this is a social studies class, what American war do you think had the most casualties? And what I mean by casualties is I mean soldiers that died in war. Take a guess. Beth?
Vietnam.
Vietnam. Not quite. Think a little bit older.
World War II.
World War II. Go back even further.
World War I.
Further.
The Boer Wars.
The border.
The Boer
Civil
Wars.
War?
I don't know. I don't know. I don't know.
American Revolution.
Not too far.
No, not too far.
That's okay.
Civil War.
Civil War. Very good, June.
Yay, June.
Does anybody know why that is? Think about who fought in that war. What was the Civil War all about, Beth?
I don't know, but they didn't have good doctors, maybe?
That's true. Didn't have good doctors. It was against. Where was this war fought? It was an American war. I'll give you a hint.
Canada?
America, right?
America.
The North against the South.
Oh, the North and
Sure.
the South. Yeah.
So they fought because there were key differences. So in the North, like up in Wisconsin and Minnesota right now, in the North back then there was a lot of factories, and in the South there are a lot of plantations and farms. So they needed more labor. Yes, June.
What year is this?
1860.
1860s. Okay.
So today I have a presentation for you. It's going to be called an e-book, and it's going to read to you to accommodate so everybody can hear and understand this in their class. I want to go through a few words with you to start out with, because there might be a few vocab words that you might find tricky and might want to see. You'll see and you want to understand, comprehend the material, and this will help. The first word is succeed. Does anybody know what that means?
When?
Win? Kinda. It sounds similar, but the South wanted to succeed from the United States, to use it in a sentence.
They want to leave?
They wanted to leave. They wanted to break away. Very good. I just mentioned plantation. There's a lot of cotton and tobacco that was planted. So plantation would be what? Kind of like
Store. The field?
fields, a farm.
Oh, the farms.
Big farms. And states' rights. This is kind of a big one. So states' rights would have to do with right now we have a federal government where Washington D.C. Makes the laws, and that's at a federal level. But as a state, the South wanted state rights, which meant the states had the right to make their own laws. So Minnesota would be able to make their own laws of how people in Minnesota would function and what rules they would follow.
So those coming over from Wisconsin wouldn't have to necessarily follow them?
They would have to follow if they're in Minnesota, but if they're in Wisconsin, they'd have to follow Wisconsin rules.
Wow.
Very good. So now I'm going to set up the presentation, and it's going to read, and it's kind of a different sounding voice, so bear with me, but it's a lot of good information. Everybody see okay?
Yes.
Yes. Yep.
There were three main sectional differences between the North and the South that caused the two regions not to get along. States' rights, economy, population. Most Southerners believed that each state should have the most decision-making power.
Well, that's what I mean by states' rights.
That looks like Texas.
It is.
It does.
And that's in the North or the South?
Canada?
It's in the
No, in
North,
the United
the
States,
North.
it's in the South.
Most Northerners believed that the federal government should have the most decision-making power.
And that too is another difference between the North and the South. The North wanted federal power, where the South wanted state power.
Teacher,
Economy.
Mr. Jeff,
Yes.
does that have anything to do with Republicans and Democrats?
Actually, it does, because mostly Republicans want power to the states and smaller government, and Democrats mostly favor big government and federal, run by the federal government. So yeah, that does, good job, June, by applying that to today's standards.
Kath, would you please go to your room to sign some papers?
Economy. In the South, the weather's warm all year, so most people were farmers. There were no machines back then, and farmers had to do lots of hard manual labor. Southerners who owned large plantations needed lots of workers. They used slaves to help with the